Hey guys, we have some special guests on the show from Weatherby. We've got company president Adam Weatherby and their operations officer, we've got Luke Thorkildsen. Now, we covered a lot of things today, from 224 all the way up to 25 and 30 cal. We covered the factory change. We covered how they build rifles. It was a great episode, and we finished it up with the one cartridge question that we ask everybody. Now, you need to check out their full product line at weatherby.com, and you also need to go find their podcast, which is On Our Mark. We hope you enjoy the show.
I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth, and today I've got some special guests around the table. Across from me, I've got Chief Operating Officer at Weatherby Rifles, Luke Thorkildsen, and I've got Presidente, Adam Weatherby. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And thanks for coming to Nebraska. You know, there's not a lot of reasons to come to Nebraska, but Hornady kind of right here in the middle of the state, kind of like a beacon sometimes. And, we had some inclement weather. Normally in the spring, the wind's going to blow, and you guys are out here for a work event. And, man, we thought, what better opportunity to sit down and have a podcast right here in the studio. So, again, thanks for coming on, and thanks for leaving the great state of Wyoming to do it.
Oh, thanks for having us. I think it's pretty awesome that we have this industry where we compete, but we're also partners.
I've heard this. I've said this on the podcast, and I've heard it. I don't think I'm capable of an original thought, to be honest with you, so I certainly didn't come up with this. But I think it might have been Jason Hornady or Neil Davies. Cooperation. This is an industry of cooperation.
Absolutely.
We never want to have a product that would be so good that it makes a whole other company that is existing and doing business and growing the market. You never want to squash those guys. There's room for everybody, and competition really makes product development happen. Really,
it does. It pushes each other. I think what's neat about our brands is, we're multi-generational, family-owned. My grandpa started back in 45, and Joyce Hornady was, 49?
49.
And so, 4 years later, so there's a few of us kind of multi-generational, with the third kind of, me and Jason being kind of at that, third generation thing that's in there now. So it's rare, U.S. family-owned, all those things. So just a lot in common. Then obviously cartridge development in our roots and in our history. So a lot of things we can talk about.
There's a lot to unpack there. Just the fact that you said the multi-generational family-owned thing, that in and of itself, it seems, regardless of industry, you get a business to that second generation of family ownership. Okay, definitely do that. To get it into the third without all kinds of turmoil and, all kinds of crazy stuff going on, that's difficult to do.
Well, who said we didn't have turmoil in our business?
Well, there's always stuff going on. However, the company and what the company has come to represent, to get a company into that third generation of the family is difficult. And to stay U.S. owned is another one. And again, you look at any industry across the board here in America, man, there's a lot of them that are owned across the pond. Mm-hmm. And, in the world of sporting arms and ammunition, I like to see that stuff domestically owned if we can. It seems like a national peacetime kind of deal. Like we have a vested interest in staying locally and family owned. Well, you mentioned, that post-World War II, Adam, like, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be what I'm going to call a pioneer coming out of the war. And, okay, you have the country trying to establish itself. And then there's, as far as ammunition goes, the Hornady story, as it were. Joyce Hornady loved to shoot varmints, like prairie dogs. And Nebraska's full of prairie dogs. Difficult animal to hit as you get far away. They're about the size of that pop bottle. And existing bullets simply weren't accurate enough. He wasn't missing because he was a bad shot. He was missing because those bullets weren't accurate. So that was, this is the problem I need to solve. Was that a similar thing with your grandfather?
Yeah. So, where Joyce Hornady's was accuracy, with my grandfather, it was energy and velocity.
Okay.
And so, thus giant overbore cartridges.
Buddy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we like to drive fast cars, right? Nothing like burning out tires and burning up gas. And so, the same is true. So the problem that he wanted to solve is he actually injured a deer. And for him, he just thought, gosh, if we could get bullets moving faster, he knew that, there was, you had mass and you had velocity, and that was going to determine your energy. And so he was kind of the pioneer of the modern Magnum as we know it. And so the idea of getting things moving faster, providing for longer shots, especially at the time with the bullets in the days, as well as, just less bullet drift, everything, just bullets spending less time in the air. So his came off of injuring an animal, kind of laying awake at night, and just kind of, started tinkering in his garage, and, much like Joyce Hornady or the others, kind of went from there. Yeah, yes. It's weird how many things start in a garage, and that garage on 4th Street that Hornady started in is still down there on 4th Street. You can drive by it. It's obviously no longer a bullet factory, but it's pretty unique, and this is tangential, but I find it very somehow fun to look at old photos of Hornady, for example. We've got some photos from in like the 1949-50 era and into the 50s and early 60s. And I bet the same is true of Weatherby, and it's true of almost any other old machine shop photo of the era. The amount of Folgers coffee cans in a machine shop in 1952 just blows my mind. And there's 3 separate photos of 3 separate machines, and every single one of them's got
no kidding
a Folgers metal coffee can. So tip of the hat to Folgers keeping America growing in that post-World War II era. Yeah. And you mentioned the need for speed, overbore, hot, nasty speed. And at the time, bullet design was bullet design. That it was a,
you got what you got.
Yeah. There was a hole, and here's the peg. That's it.
Yep.
That's all you got. You've got the tangent ogive, which was necessary at the time, easy to manufacture, somewhat efficient, but you had restrictions of how long that bullet could be. And so a tangent ogive is an easy way to cap a bullet a little bit short. If you want to increase efficiency out of it, the only way to do that is through velocity. And when Roy started, was he a 30 cal guy at heart, or did he have an affinity towards a different caliber? I mean, his favorite all time, he was a quarter bore guy. I mean, the 257 Weatherby was his favorite. And so, over the decades where there's been so much development in, 7s and 30s and a lot of things, there's been really the least in the 25 up till now. But we have always, had the fastest 25. So, I mean, the 300 Weatherby has been our kind of all-around bestseller, just kind of the classic quintessential North American big game cartridge. You can do anything with 300 Weatherby.
There's not much in North America that you can't have great success with.
I mean, from Brown Bear on down, I mean, it's literally everything on this continent. But a quarter bore fan, and any listener of this podcast would know, I've had a 1/4-inch hole in my heart forever because my first rifle was in 257 Roberts. And my dad just liked 25s for some reason. And so that was my first gun, and I loved it. And I killed everything I put the crosshairs on. And when you're 11 years old and you're learning about guns and hunting and stuff, you go to school and that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I had several friends that also had 25 cals, none cooler than the 257 Weatherby. And I remember the first time that I saw one of those cartridges compared to my 257 Roberts. And I don't think my buddy listens to the show, but Dylan, if you're listening, I'm talking about you. Yeah, he had the 257 Weatherby, and I was like, well, man, Dad, that looks way cooler than the 257 Roberts. So big fans of the 25 cal here. And, like you mentioned, Adam, the 25 cal in the world of ballistics really saw almost no change in a really long time. You see all the efficient bullet designs. In the late 60s and 70s, you have the transition into C-can ogives. Okay, 25 cals get updated there. But then in the world of kind of precision rifle and longer range shooting, 30 cal, my goodness. Would you have ever thought there'd be a 250 grain 30 caliber bullet?
Right. Yeah,
just incredible. And then you see the same thing in 6.5 when the 260 and the 6.5 Creedmoor kind of created that swing in 2007, 2008. And now you have like 140, 147, 153, 156 grain 6.5.
Yeah.
You really saw no development in the 25 cal until just a few years ago. Ace came out with the 131 Blackjack, the hollow point boat tail, ogive for days, boat tail, long, sexy looking bullet. And that really kicked off a resurgence, if you will, in 25 cal. I think mainly in the competitive circuit, but then
you're going to see, whatever's working in competition, it's going to work in the field as well. We call, the NASCAR thing, race on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yeah, for sure.
And from that 131 Blackjack, then you saw everybody get involved in bullet design. And now, from Hornady standpoint, we've got a 134 grain ELD match, a 138 grain ELD match, which ballistically it's a juggernaut. It's made up.
Yeah.
It's made up. It's insane. And then for the sportsman, a 128 grain ELDX. And you see these really long bullets that need substantial twist rate. And, we're excited to launch and partner up with you guys on the 25 Creedmoor. Let's talk a little bit about, the 25 Creedmoor. Now, it is kind of the antithesis of Need for Speed when you compare it to a 257 Weatherby.
Different animal.
Different animal. And there's room for both of them.
Yep.
And the 25 Creed with these new bullets, the cartridge is just the launch platform, but the bullets really, they're doing the work once they exit the muzzle, and they're super efficient. Mm-hmm. What drew you guys to the 25 Creed?
I think for me, Adam probably has a similar answer, but we get so much requests for updating twist rate on 2D7 because they want to shoot heavier, longer bullets, like you just mentioned. And so we've had a couple projects on a couple different of our cartridges updating twist rates. 224 Weatherby is an example. We just kind of updated that one.
Yeah.
But when we found out you guys were going to be bringing that back out officially, then we're like, that might dovetail into some stuff we've been working on with barrel twist weights we already have. And so that was curious.
I think too, for me in a true short action, there's not a ton of options. And so I think, for things that are going to have that high BC and reach out far. And so I think the 25 Creedmoor is going to fit a great space, for the sportsman, like you said, to go out there with the short action and just to have something else that's going to actually, carry energy out there further. So I think we're, excited from that standpoint. We're just 25 people. And so I think that's, I think that's fun. Yeah. So I think that the 25 Creedmoor is going to make a lot of sense in some of our platforms. And there's some things probably I can't talk about yet. I think that's going to work out well for that too, but it'll fit in our little 6-lug Mark V action, which is kind of fun too. Sure. And so it fit actually in our new short Mark V action that we just came out with in our 224 Weatherby. Yeah. So there's just a lot of platforms that it could work on in our rifle line, and I think fit that space. And obviously the bullet development has been there in the 25s and kind of the new era bullet for just the past few years. And obviously now then the cartridges and the guns, cartridges and the rifles and chamberings are going to have to kind of catch up with what's just happened the last few years. So I think to kind of be partners on that, or what is it, competitors and what was that word?
Cooperation.
Right, some cooperation that we can work together on that. I think there's just a lot of synergy there that's going to happen off of this cartridge.
That's excellent. You mentioned platforms. You guys have an idea of some platforms going to be available in this one?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be in our new 307. Platform. We have multiple models, some with detachable magazines, some with a hinged floor plate. And then I brought up the 224 a minute ago because that relaunched our Varmint Master action, the Mark V short.
Yeah. Wasn't that the original name of the
Varmint Master?
Yeah, the 224.
Back in the 60s.
Varmint Master.
Yeah. So we've got now we call it the Mark V short action. Mm-hmm. So technically the 6-lug and the 9-lug action are both long actions, and you didn't need that much bolt throw.
Sure.
So the 6-lug short makes a lot of sense for 25 Creed.
So at the time of this podcast, obviously we won't have anything out in that, but frankly, that the 25 Creedmoor will fit in that new 6-lug Mark V short action for us, which is a dinky little guy, giving some good ultralight opportunities, a lot of different opportunities with it, which will be fun too. Yep. Because most people just have a short and a long, or whatever, you get your mid-size actions, but it's all the same, diameter. The beauty of our 6-lug Mark V action is, it can accept up to, the standard like 473 size, case heads and stuff. But yeah, it's small and skinny, so it's going to be a fun little thing for something like a 25 Creed.
Hornady V-Match ammunition, loaded exclusively with Hornady ELD VT bullets. The low-drag design of the ELD VT bullets provide high velocity retention and minimal wind deflection. Initial offerings include 22 arc, 6 arc, 6mm Creedmoor, 6.5 Grendel, and 6.5 Creedmoor. Elevate your varmint shooting experience, shatter records, and make your mark like never before with V-Match ammunition from Hornady.
and I think of 25 Creedmoor, and I think of, where you guys in Sheridan, Wyoming, my mind immediately goes to antelope.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Yes.
the 25 cal as a whole, super versatile. However, man, it appears to me as like
It's like the antelope cartridge,
yeah,
diameter.
Yeah, it really is, because you might have to take some of those long shots. Antelope, incredibly wary. One of my favorite animals to hunt. I mean,
Yes.
I love to hunt the mountains. I love to hunt all these other things. There's something about getting on the prairie and doing spot and stalk antelope that
100% agree with you. Yeah.
Yep. It's great because, I'm an early riser anyway, but you don't have to beat them out there. You can have breakfast.
Yes.
You can go find
They'll
them.
still be standing out there.
Yeah, right. So
It's kind of like the big game equivalent to duck hunting.
there you go.
Like
Yeah.
it's a little more social. You
Mhm.
can. I don't always truck hunt, but when I do, it's for antelope kind
Yep.
of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned that six lug being ultralight. I'm guilty of this. Guy behind the camera, both of them guilty of this, and I'm sure you guys are as well. There have been people who have turned up their nose like, why would you do that for an antelope? Hunting public land? Yeah, I'm going to bounce around, but then you end up 5 miles away from the truck
Yeah.
for that one public land antelope that you just had to go track down. It's like, you were 5 miles in there for an antelope? It's like, I don't know. It was an accident. Next
Yeah.
thing I know,
Just got excited.
they kept running and I kept chasing them.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that ultralight might be a little bit of a benefit there. We've all
Absolutely.
been there. But the 25 Creedmoor and those new bullet designs, not just antelope. There's a lot of other sporting use between
For sure.
whitetail and mule deer,
Mhm.
black bear, with the right shot distance and shot presentation up to and including, a cow elk would be well within the scope of that thing.
Mhm.
But the lion's share, deer and antelope, like I said, black bear, that's its power curve. It's right in there. And with, fine rifles from you guys, it's an easy button. And one thing that I loved about the 25 cal growing up that I didn't appreciate until I got older, and that I'm doing for my kids and my wife now, it's nice, moderate recoil. You get excellent external ballistics, but it's not beating you up.
No.
Mhm.
Even the 287 Weatherby's not bad.
Right.
So, load it down a little bit with 25 Creed, like it's tame.
And that's what's fun. I think it's, like with the 25 Creed, being able to shoot the 130-ish, bullets are fun. There's something about a 257 Weatherby and a sub 100 grain that's just fun when you're pushing the, when you're pushing up close
You're
to
pushing
4,000.
4?
Yeah, it's just kind of fun. So what's our lightest we doing that right now?
92 grain hammer.
Yep.
Yeah, we do a 92 hammer, and shoot, I should have looked ahead of time what that's spitting
It's right
out.
at 4.
But it's fast, and so there's something fun about that too. So
There certainly is. I was recently on a coyote hunt and shooting some R&D products, and one of them's going real fast, and it's like, oh my goodness, what's the range? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, just put it on the fur.
Yeah,
right. And that's obviously how. That's how we're here today. We obviously most our money is made off of selling guns.
Mhm.
Rifles and shotguns and so many different things. You guys sell a whole lot more ammo than we do, but our roots were in that high speed, in that velocity, and in cartridge development, and so that's like it's good for us. Even kind of relaunching this 224 Weatherby and modernizing it and putting it with the 1 and 8 twist, and so we have out. Now up to an 80 grain that you can put in that thing where it used to be a 14 twist way back in the day.
You got 50 grain bullets and that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
exactly.
the 224 Weatherby Varmint Master, 1963 or 64. You said the 1 and 14 twist. That probably was 220 Swift, 22 250.
Yes.
I mean, that thing had to be 4,000 feet and then some. I don't.
It depended on the bullet, but it's up there. We now have our fastest is 4125.
It's
Wow.
a 38 or 37 grain
37
hammer.
grain hammer.
Yep.
And what's cool about that bullet, being monolithic, is it's actually it's stabilized in that 1 and 8 just fine.
Yep.
So it's kind of fun that 1 and 8 will do, all the way in the gamut, of it.
Yeah.
So we're putting, and then we got the new 55, the VMAX, 55 grain VMAX, is
Yeah.
it? Or 50 or 55?
We do both, but I think yours is a 50.
might
And then the
be.
It is
55 is a
you're right.
Spire point.
It's
You're
the
right.
50.
So we're doing the 50 VMAX in there. And then we got an 80 grain burger we're doing up in there, so something real long.
80.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's-
kind of real versatile.
They could add that extra 0.5
Yeah.
grain.
Well, I think we're going to do an 80 and 5/8. But that is cool.
That's right.
So with the relaunch, so from 1963 or 4, for 5 decades, you're running the 224 with the 1 in 14 twist, and you're limited on some bullets. For reference, though, that 50 grain VMAX doing 4,100 and change. A 22-250 with a 50 grainer is doing about 3,700.
Yeah.
So you've got
no slouch.
a significant velocity.
Well, we're not.
advantage.
That velocity was for that 37 hammer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know offhand. Our listeners will have to go check it out.
It's probably 39-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, it's blowing the doors off a traditional
Yes.
22-250.
Yes.
What spurred you guys to look at, hey, this is a popular cartridge. You got plenty of demand for it. It was kind of the varmint master of its time. What shifted internally where you guys like, okay, maybe we should do a rebranding, a relaunch? Obviously, with the cartridge largely remaining the same, just the twist rate was changed?
Well, what happened was kind of a long story, but we had our Varmint Master action that was around, and it was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. The Mark V was made overseas for a lot of years. It was in Germany and then Japan. So my dad had brought it back to the U.S. in the early 90s. And just the demand wasn't there at the time for it. And so we never retooled up, and we basically discontinued that short little action in the early 90s. So up till this year, we had not made any 224s for 30 years.
Whoa.
We'd supplied ammo just with the Spire Point and just to try to keep guns shooting if guys wanted to shoot some stuff, but we hadn't had it for 30 years. And so we had an idea of taking our old Varmint Master action, updating a few things on it where it actually, size-wise with the ejection port and so forth, would be able to actually do some other short-action cartridges because our original Varmint Master action, those old ones, would not cycle like a 308 or 6.5 Creed.
It wouldn't eject if it was loaded.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we updated and kind of tweaked it and said, let's re-come out with that action. But before putting in any other model or any ultralight models or anything else, let's bring it out in the Mark V Deluxe Varmint Master 224, 22-250, and let's go old school. And so we relaunched it with that, then updated the twist. So we had a lot of pent-up demand of people wanting to buy guns for the last 30 years in it. And it has this kind of small but passionate group of followers to kind of like hit that nerve first. And we probably sold 2 to 3 times as many as we thought we would, and we launched it here a month or 2 ago.
Wow. Well, good for you guys. And it just shows, I mean, Weatherby has such a following of I mean this respectfully, but like a cult-like following. I can think of several people in just the little area that I grew up that they're Weatherby collectors.
Yeah.
That they're always on the look for, oh, I don't have that one, or I have this one. So, yeah, you do have a following that's pretty passionate about the products, about the legacy. And like we talked about earlier, the fact that it's still family-owned, still U.S.-based, that means a ton. So within the first 30 days, blew the doors off the sales projections.
Yeah, we did.
That's pretty darn cool. And it goes to show that America still has that need for speed. There's still the desire to go fast.
Yeah. I think there's another element to that, too, is we've got these passionate Weatherby fans.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of what we've done since moving to Wyoming in the last 7 years has been counter to what some people may have expected Weatherby to do, like with the RPM case. That's not a double radius shoulder, rebated rim. It's Magnum performance, but it wasn't necessarily made for a 9-lug action. We made it to go in a smaller, lighter gun. And so some people also were like, well, these stocks aren't Monte Carlo stocks anymore. And so we're like, we haven't forgotten about how we got here. And it's kind of just a callback to our roots, and we're still supporting that. And it's been really fun to see that Woodstock high gloss deluxe in a 224 small action. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I think you guys probably find that like you got to stay true to your roots and where you came from in your history, but yet at the same time, with modern technology and innovation, there's new things that you can do.
Push the limit.
And so what a Joyce Hornady or Roy Weatherby did in the 40s or 50s was innovative at the time.
Right.
Looking back, it's not now. At the time, it was incredibly innovative, and that's why we're here today. And so it's staying true to that and respecting that and that heritage and that legacy, but yet not allowing that to keep you in the past and be afraid of things going forward. Like some people listen and go, oh, the Creedmoor haters will go, oh, can't believe Adam and Luke were on there and said something good about 25 Creedmoor and Creed. It's like, hey, does that mean we're abandoning? Do I still love to shoot a 33-78 with, over 100 grains of powder and a 30 cal? Absolutely. Yep. Would that be my gun of choice for long range elk? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that there's not a time and a place for different cartridges and kind of understanding that at the same time. So it's really kind of
it's a dichotomy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we see that at Hornady, just like you mentioned. You know, I talked earlier. We have a 250 grain, 30 caliber A-tip.
Mhm.
You're trying to hit something far away, piece of steel. That is the bullet. But you know what? One of the best sellers in 30 caliber is 150 grain Spire Point, just like it was in 1949.
Absolutely.
When Joyce Hornady made the first one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And big dichotomy there, because you look at those two things and they don't even look like they're in the same universe.
Yep.
No.
And they're both incredibly popular for different reasons, and there's room for both of them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like it.
Find the latest shirts, hats, hoodies, and accessories that you see here on the podcast and much more at HornadyGear.com.
So in the vein of need for speed, you guys talked about the 224 Weatherby, the Varmint Master, and that incredible legacy, kind of the new kid on the block that I think you guys are dabbling in as well. Also got a need for speed, 22 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
So like you'd mentioned, Adam, like that is kind of a weird juxtaposition that, you're paying homage to cool history and updating the performance. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got the new kid, and that's the 22 Creedmoor.
It is. Yeah, I think that optimized for the slightly heavier bullets and the faster twist rate on the barrel, it makes a ton of sense. With our new action, fits in there. 307 works great. So we were kind of primed and ready to roll with the 224. Shares the same twist rate. So
so you already had the barrels, you already had the components.
Yeah.
The bolt face is standard 473.
Yep.
Right.
It's just a natural fit. And the Creedmoor, although Hornady doesn't own the name Creedmoor, it does have a lot of, tie to Hornady, but still got a need for speed, because that 22 Creedmoor is absolutely ripping and being SAMI approved now with the twist rate and the dimensions. Brass is available. You guys are going to be loading ammunition?
No, off the get-go, we're going to be chambering rifles, but not planning on doing ammo on it on the beginning. I mean,
not yet.
Yeah,
Maybe sometime.
Yeah.
Never know. But,
Never know. Well,
but we're getting more and more requests, I think, for the rifles as it's gaining popularity. And a lot of folks, it seems like a lot of folks in Texas, just, there's some kind of hot spots, obviously, of the round. And I think, we're just getting more and more requests for it. It's gonna, I think it's easy. It's going to be inherently accurate, I think, for those that want light recoil. But when you can get up to the 80 and 5/8 grain bullet that you guys are going to launch, I think, to be able to have that with some mild recoil and everything is going to be, I think, pretty cool for some folks. So
it is. I've been blown away by 22 Creedmoor performance. I built one years ago, 18, let's say, and had fun with it, shot the barrel out, moved on with my life. And it was fun, but I didn't ever really do anything meaningful with it. And then here just recently, I built another one and took it to Africa, shot some plains game with it, shot a big Nebraska whitetail with it.
Nice.
Bunch of coyotes, prairie dogs. I mean, I have shot the snot out of this thing, and I've just been blown away with the performance of bullets that, a few years ago didn't exist. Now we've got like our
That's what's intriguing.
80 grain ELDX. There's some monolithic offerings out there that are going to be really good for the 22 Creedmoor, and it doesn't have to be, I'm going to say just a coyote cartridge or just for beating up prairie dogs. You can use it on, deer and antelope, and just like the reasons Roy had the need for speed years ago.
Yes.
Flat trajectory, less wind drift. It's win-win.
Correct. And I think that's where we'll still hold that, that's where talk about need for speed, and what's important to us is, you go out to the range with a 6.5 300 Weatherby or something, and it's just, I say when you pull that trigger, the boom to clank time is so short, and there's still, some fun things I think about, about having that, or like if you're out in Africa and you're on the plains and kind of doing those things, there's time for the others that are going to have a heck of a lot more arc on that bullet. But, especially we're, we sell a lot of guns to most of our customers are hunters. A lot of them are maybe not, and they're just, range guys or competition guys or those things. But the bulk of our kind of loyal following, it's hunters.
Absolutely.
And so to be able to provide that speed and get the energy is, I think, at the core of who we are. So it just makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely does. I like it. There's a lot to be said about going fast, but there's also a lot to be said about shooting well. And you guys are in the business of making accurate rifles. So I'd like to bend your ear a little bit, if you can indulge us, on the move to Sheridan and what kind of turmoil that brought along, if any, and then establishing yourself there and building accurate rifles there. What has that been like? the components that go into an accurate rifle. What makes your rifle shoot so well?
But before you answer that, Adam, you mentioned that Joyce had a garage on 4th Street,
Yep.
still there.
Yep.
I don't know if Roy's place. What's in Roy's original spot in Southgate?
Oh, it's been changed over a bunch of times.
California is a little different.
Hit by riots in Southern California. It's not Grand Island, Nebraska, where we originally were. So we've definitely come a long ways. My dad then moved after my grandfather passed away in '88. He moved it up to the central coast of California just to get out of that LA area for obvious reasons.
Sure.
Much like my dad moved it to there, the writing was on the wall that, we had a rich history in California, but our future was not going to be there. And, my grandpa, I always say, like in Southern California, John Wayne, Roy Rogers, Gary Cooper, would walk in my grandpa's shop. He'd build custom guns for him. He leveraged California from a marketing perspective, from a lot of things.
It was the land of opportunity back then.
It was.
Different time. Yeah. You had John Wayne coming in. Yeah. How cool is that?
Because my grandpa grew up in Kansas as a poor farm kid and moved out there for opportunity. Had no clue what he was going to do, and this sprung out of there. I mean, he didn't have $1. So it's truly the American dream. That's how
selling insurance.
Yeah, he was selling like AAA insurance door to door.
Yeah.
And then, had this
tough racket
thought and get laying awake at night thinking how to get bullets moving faster, and just literally wrote letters to editors and magazines, and Sports Afield, put one in one of their, magazines, and he started to get this following that, that's why we're here today. So that's how it all started. So much history in California. But obviously just there wasn't a future there. And so as Brenda, my wife, and I kind of came in as 3rd generation, it was clear right off the bat. You just started to look, and if you're buying guns or ammo on the shelf at a retailer, and we had a lot of handicaps going into it and a lot of costs going into it, that's not a value add for that customer in the end.
Sure.
The extra California stuff, from regulations to cost of living to, just expenses and all the different things that had to happen. And so it was clear to us we need to move. And so we started to look at other Western states. Ended up on Wyoming, and
picked a winner.
Former Governor Matt Mead just kind of said, "We're going to get you here. No other way about it. You're going to get to Wyoming." Formed a friendship with him and just the folks at the state, and then ultimately the city of Sheridan, and got there. And the move itself was daunting. I mean, you guys, built this new facility here, but it's like 7 miles away. We did the 1,000-mile move, so imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that's where Luke came on. We were rebuilding the team and just hired some great people, moved some great people, but, 80+% were going to be new hires of a 75-year-old business.
That had to be daunting in and of itself.
7 miles for you guys, it's not.
You keep
not
the same
that
team.
hard. You probably have
you
lost
picked the
one
same
or two.
team.
I don't know, but
we added people in the move. You take these big machines, you put them on a flatbed trailer, and you do this all at night.
Mm-hmm.
You show up here the next morning, and your machines are in place. So for us, it was
wasn't that smooth?
Yeah, that's not how our story went. We knew it was some short-term pain for long-term gain. I mean, we were going to be down for a few weeks. I mean, it was going to be painful, but it was the future. I mean, we, like you said, it's 3rd generation. It's family-owned. It's like, to us, it was like Brenda and I knew we needed to do this for the future of this business. And what's incredible is we went through a lot of pain. It was tough, but we invested some capital. We put a lot of equipment out there, a lot of investment in innovation. We had this brand new, exciting, passionate team located at the foot of the Bighorn Mountains who loved to hunt and fish and be outdoors. And then we had this brand new facility, and so we were just poised for growth. In our first 3 years there, we doubled in size for a 75-year-old business.
That was the spark plug. It sounded like, getting out of California.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was huge. It's so challenging. I mean, you've got to hire a workforce in a place where your machines don't exist yet.
Yeah.
And then you've got to send them to California to learn their job from people that aren't moving. Like, there's a lot of
double employee. So just from a cost of doing business, let's say that year we didn't make money at all. Because you're hiring people, sending them up to go out to California to train, and having all these double people and keeping temps on there because you're losing it there and you're building this new building. So the transition was painful, but you got to look at it in the long term. Is our 80th year. And there's a lot of chapters in the past, my grandpa, my dad, that had short-term pain for long-term gain. That's why we're here today, because people before us had taken risks. And I wouldn't be here today afforded this if my grandpa and dad did not take risks. sign the personal guarantees with the bank that if it all goes under, you lose everything. All the risks that are taken, the hard family discussions, all of those things. And so we're like, hey, people have done it before us. That's what we're going to do to move forward. And it could not have been better. It couldn't have been a better pick for a location. And then the innovation that came with it, I think coming back to your question and the rifles and everything, I mean, our engineering team is, over 5 times bigger than it was when we were in California. We were able to then insource again and be able to afford to do that, where we'd been outsourcing so many things because of the way that business was in California. Mm-hmm. We were able to come back to our roots of innovation and engineering and manufacturing and put a lot of money into what we're doing there. So you talk about accuracy of rifles and us chambering and contouring and doing things to barrels, and even our actions, our titanium lightweight actions that are on a 5th axis, CNC machine now, and like our tolerances are so tight on those things, and so I mean, we can literally almost blueprint actions on some of these machines we have, let alone our gunsmiths and all that kind of stuff. So we've really put a lot in there. Our carbon fiber stocks that we make, from scratch, that it was a clean sheet of paper with a new team to say, let's make the lightest, strongest carbon fiber stock on the market. So and that's how Peak 44 kind of birthed out of those conversations. So it's really, the move gave us the fuel, but we needed the people. It's not, a facility alone isn't going to do it. A state alone isn't going to do it. Yeah. It's the combination of all of those things that kind of put us where we're at. So
yeah, you said a lot of things there. One takeaway that I had, that you may have explicitly said, but that I derived from it, though, was the people. It's about that they're passionate about what they're doing. And we talked about this on our drive out here to the studio at Hornady, where you walk around. If we took a walk down here and asked, hey, what are you guys doing in the middle of November? You're going to have an overwhelming majority of like, oh, that's Nebraska's rifle season. I'm going hunting, of course. Like when you have people making the product that actually use the product, that's when you're going to make the best stuff. And it sounds like, obviously you're making great stuff in California, but you're probably making as good or better equipment right now at home in Wyoming than you ever have.
Yeah, absolutely. Not that there weren't passionate users in California, but we have a lot of great Western hunters. We have PRS guys on the engineering team. We've got guys that are absolutely dedicated, passionate users. And a lot of the people that we have now would not have moved to California. It wouldn't.
Including yourself.
I wouldn't have done it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about where you're at.
Yeah. And I think it's not just the quality, but it's the rate of new product development too, and innovation. So, we launch in a year now what might have been 5 years of product in the past. And, so the rate at which we're moving and launching things, probably a little too quick at times. Especially right now, market's a little slower than it was a couple years ago. And so now's the time to push forward and to have the new. And so we're continuing to launch a lot of new product. And I think that's come out of really the team that we've built in Sheridan, which has been great.
That's exciting stuff. And it sounds like, the spark really lit a huge fire as far as new development goes. You got the new team going on. You mentioned Peak 44. Mm-hmm. We have to talk about that a little bit. Luke, earlier you'd mentioned, having rifle stocks with the classic high gloss wood with the Monte Carlo. And then now you've got the exact opposite, where you've got
these are not that
ergonomic carbon fiber, super light, super strong. The grip angle's way different. But Peak 44, really a necessary company, and maybe one of those things that you may have outsourced when you were in California, but now you can bring this in-house, design exactly what you want, and make it work. So let's talk Peak 44. It kind of jumped out of nowhere, and you decided, hey, we're doing rifle stocks.
Yeah, it was kind of out of necessity. We actually launched in 2019 in the midst of our move to Wyoming. We had
great timing.
The new team had already had begun working on some new products, and so we kind of relaunched the Mark V with this new Mark V backcountry, super lightweight. Really led the charge in the super lightweight backcountry rifle, sub 5 pounds with the 6-lug action, using a carbon fiber stock that existed. Same thing about the 224. We way exceeded what we thought we were going to sell.
Yep.
We're like, we're onto something. This is a big deal. And it got to where we just could not get enough stocks. And so we're like, we got to figure out how to get more stocks going. We basically couldn't buy enough. So, what's
a machine?
Adam's smart enough or dumb enough to be like, well, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And so we set our engineers out on a path to figure this out. And the beauty was we didn't have a preconceived notion of what the best way to do it was, but we knew what we wanted to get to, and we landed there. We make them difficult in a difficult way, but
in other words, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. But the process, the process we use, I don't believe anybody else is using to make stock. And what we end up with is the lightest, strongest stock out there. The blacktooth stock's 20 ounces.
Wow.
And-
yeah, that is nothing.
And you can put a 300 Weatherby in it and fire 5,000 rounds through it. It's not going to crack anything. We patented inside of it a carbon fiber, basically kind of bedding block. It was called the carbon fiber link. It's actually right behind the recoil lug there. Instead of putting aluminum bedding blocks or other material back into the stock, we actually are using carbon fiber, making our own molds to put inside.
And it's
Of it.
bonded to the two halves of the
Okay.
stock, basically. So it's not just floating and fill material. It is bonded to the carbon fiber. So
So we have,
Interesting.
there's some innovative things we've done with it and patented with it. We did the same thing with a recoil pad or 3D hex recoil pad, because then you have light and everybody goes, well, then it's going to be recoil, especially with those Weatherby cartridges. And
Yeah.
so then we tried to mitigate that with a new design recoil pad. So, I mean, those from both the design of it to we make our own molds for the stocks to all the way through the process, the whole team and all the touch points from laying up the stock to the final finish. I think we have the best carbon fiber stock out there right now.
yeah.
So,
And then
That's
a
neat.
funny thing happened. We got to the end of that development and we're like, hey, this is a really good stock. It might be short-sighted to just call this a Weatherby.
Yeah.
For quite a few reasons, but you know, you're a bad company
Yeah,
in
right.
the eyes of modern marketing. Like
Sure.
we can't do paid Google advertisements. We
Right.
can't do a lot of stuff.
We're in a
that-
vice class. Yeah.
yeah, we can't do much. So we had this idea of, well, what if we had this accessory company that doesn't make scary guns and we can market a little bit differently?
Sure.
And so that was kind of the birth of
And then-
P44.
And so we inlet them for Tikkas, different 700s
Oh,
and
that was my next question.
Vanguards and Weatherbys and all sorts of things. And so we put the money into. We thought, gosh, we have something out there that we'd love to get into people's hands.
Yeah.
And so that's where kind of the sister company was started, really from the engineers at Weatherby, but then
That's
kind of
awesome.
flowed into Peak 44. So yeah, you can actually get on peak44.com and custom build a stock with all sorts of different inlets. I mean, we don't have every one in the world because there's a bazillion of them.
Right.
But from barrel contours to actions, we're doing a lot of them out there, and so it's great aftermarket stock.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I've
option,
seen
so.
a lot of them. I don't know where it ranks in your sales, but I have seen a lot of Tikka T3s in the Peak 44.
Yeah.
It seems like that was, I don't. Maybe it hasn't shown up on your sales report, but
No,
that
it
seems
does.
like that's a good
so
one.
We launched with a 700 platform,
course.
Mark V and Vanguard,
Mhm.
and instantly it's like, well, what about Tikka?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it took us a little bit, but we're like, yeah, we should support that too. And as soon as we launched it, it definitely.
Well, they make an
Yeah.
action that people really like and a good quality action, but one of
Right.
the biggest complaints about the entry levels is the stock.
Of course.
And so a lot of people are upgrading, and so yeah, it just made sense that we do
Yeah.
that too. So again, that's something we wouldn't have been able to do in California. It's like some of that innovation and really kind of coming out and doing that has been it's been
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah, so there's two stocks today. The Blacktooth is a sporter style,
Mhm.
no Monte Carlo,
Right.
very very sleek.
Traditional.
That's 20 ounces. And then there's the Bastion, that's about 24 ounces. A little bit longer foregrip, dual swivel stud in the front if you want to run a bipod and whatever. And then a little bit more vertical on
right.
the grip.
And that's the stock that I personally have more field time with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And going from competition to hunting and back to competition and back
Yeah.
to hunting, when you can find a stock on both
can do
sides of the
both.
spectrums, that's
Yes.
like, oh, this grip angle, that's familiar.
That's 24 ounces.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's because you go back not that long ago. You go back 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
You weren't getting those ergonomics under 32 ounces.
No.
And you throw in an ultralight action with an ultralight stock, good shooting rifle. It's win, win, win all the way around.
Yeah, I think that's where like our Alpine CT model that we'll have in the 22 and the 25 Creed, that it's a sweet spot. It's a great barrel. It's lightweight, but it punches above its weight class. If you just look at the specs, a lot of people, they're used to these 12-pound guns that if you're going to go to the range and just do target time, well, you can do that with an 8-pound gun.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scoped and
out.
everything. Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
The HIT Target Impact Indicator. Instant hit confirmation at extended ranges has never been easier. The HIT Target Impact Indicator easily attaches to most target stands and not the steel target itself. The highly sensitive internal accelerometer detects vibration when the target is impacted, activating the red LED lights that flash Morse code for HIT. Where impact confirmation can be difficult, light it up with the HIT Target Impact Indicator from Hornady.
I've got one last question before we kind of wrap this thing up, and I don't know the answer, so I'm not fishing for anything. This is an honest question from Seth. In the last few years, suppressors have gotten so much more prevalent because of the ease of access. Companies like Silencer Central, the Silencer Shop, there's a bunch of companies. My local guy that I buy suppressors through has a small shop in the middle of nowhere in the country, and he's got the e-file set up. You can do it right there. So it's getting a lot easier, and it's getting way faster. So we've seen this huge increase in suppressors on hunting rifles. Now, in the Need for Speed pursuit, traditionally longer barrels, you get free velocity. You know, that's an easy button. Have you guys responded on your rifle lines with offering some models with a little bit shorter barrel because suppressors obviously add some length?
Regrettingly, yes.
Yeah,
it makes my grandfather roll over in his grave. It makes me lay awake at night because we're compromising speed, but we also have an obligation to, hear and listen to the needs of our customers.
Sure.
And so we have more and more models now where we're chopping a couple inches off, and doing that. Now we're keeping we still have some 26s.
Of course, you have
but,
to.
But a
6
lot
by
of
300 is always going to be 26.
Yeah, because if not, you're going to chop it down, then it's a PRC, then it's a Creedmoor, you keep going. And there's guys out there are some people that just overdo it. And it's like, why do you have that cartridge? Like at a certain point, a 30-06 in this barrel length, just get a 308 or whatever it is. And so, So people are taking it overboard. We're not down there as far as other people, but we have listened, and especially this past year, we got a lot of 22-inch stuff now that maybe would have been 24 and 20s that are 22. So we've kind of come down a couple inches. From a sales perspective, and the majority of people it's there are kind of loyal, diehard Weatherby customers. I think they still kind of cringe a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've tried to, with certain models, though, keep some of the legacy barrel lengths, too, so that we can push the velocity out of there. I don't know, Luke, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add is since our move to Wyoming, we've doubled the size of our business. A lot of that is new Weatherby customers. Some of it's just they just like the rifle we're building.
Yeah.
And so we've attracted new users that aren't just our like 300 Weatherby diehards. We got guys that are buying our 6.5 Creedmoor, And so offering shorter barrels, it's definitely in right now. There's no question. So we want to keep our long-term user base happy, and we also want to continue to attract new customers. We're a for-profit business. We want to keep selling stuff.
Crazy scheme to make money. Yeah.
We do want to keep selling things. So I guess the answer is we're doing both.
Good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And, it makes more SKUs, which drives me nuts, too, because we always have the wrong thing, and so it's just more part numbers. But I also think that the bullet technology and higher BCs have added, obviously, to that, too, because before, if you were to cut those 2 inches off, you're like, man, we just lost a little bit. But due to new bullet technology, you kind of gain, at some point, you gain some of that back. Yeah. And so, the answer is, yes.
Got to do both.
Yeah. And not to kick the dead horse, but the move to Wyoming, we've brought so many processes in-house. Whether we couldn't have done multiple barrel lengths very easily in California because at some point they got chased north, into Paso Robles at the end, and we're doing less processes in-house, barrels being one of them. And now we have so much more flexibility. We can get a barrel blank, and a 308 1 and 10 twist can be anything. It can be a 300 Weatherby. It can be a 308. It could be a 300 Win. It can be a 26-inch barrel. It can be a 16-inch barrel. It doesn't matter.
6 different contours. It can be fluted, not fluted, spiral fluted, straight fluted. So it can be all those things.
It's more finished goods SKUs to track, but it's not really any more raw materials to keep track.
Yeah, you got one blank in, but you got to.
So the growth that we've seen is more flexibility in our manufacturing. So
that's super handy. And like Adam mentioned, the evolution of bullet design has helped extend the range, regardless of velocity, because they're holding on to velocity longer. Third variable, I feel like the suppressor companies have done a great job of also keeping up with us. Now you can get really short suppressors, so you're not adding. I think the Thunder Beast Ultra 5, the Silencer Central has the Banish back country.
Yep.
Mac Brothers has one, the Zenith K. That thing is 30 cal Magnum rated, 4.75 inches long. I mean, it's just incredible. So, yeah, you can find that nice balance. And like you said, it's more SKUs, but the customer gets what
add
they want.
one more thing to it. Like we run the MDT Hunt 26 chassis, carbon fiber folding.
Yep.
So you're swinging how many inches? 11 inches or 10, 9? How long is that buttstock?
Yeah, it's about 11.
So you're cutting 11 inches off by being able to put a gun in your pack. So it could help you either A, with your suppressor length, or B, with your barrel length. So it's another way, though, that you can shorten up a product in the field and throw it in your pack by folding the buttstock. So all of those things is kind of mix and match and kind of figure out what's important to you.
Yep.
So,
and it sounds like collectively throughout the podcast that Weatherby is at a place now where you guys can offer all those variables to the consumer. Like you mentioned, Luke, that back in California, you had some outsourced process controls that you didn't have the ability to manipulate. And now, with being in-house, grown significantly, you have the ability to give customers more options. And when there's more options that fit a specific need, you're just naturally going to have more customers. That's
absolutely
people helping people.
Right. And it's important for customers to realize that, it's funny, like, I look at automobile companies or something, I pick a brand, that I like, and it's like, sometimes I hate some of their cars and I drool over some others. There's different customers out there, and I think the same is true, right? Like you said, you still sell a lot of old interlocks that, from 1949, you got your A-tip guys. And so, and we're going to have both. And so to understand, like, from brands and to respect that our customer profile is not one person, one age, one demographic, one location, one type of person.
Right.
And, we want to provide, we say we exist to inspire the dreams of hunters and shooters. And what inspires you is maybe not going to inspire somebody else. But we want to inspire as many people as we can to get in the outdoors, to shoot and hunt and do it with people you love and have a great time doing it.
Man, I couldn't have said it better myself. That sounds like a good way to wrap this one up, because that was, mic drop. That is true, though. And then I feel like in this industry of cooperation, that's every company's goal in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Like we are a successful company because we've got passionate employees that are outdoors that are getting involved, and we want more people to get outdoors and get involved. And largely, outside of some of our military law enforcement products, what we like to say is we sell fun. And when you're out on the hunt, you need a rifle. You sell fun. People,
it's a good business to be in.
Yeah, Adam, I forget your exact quote. I had a good friend of mine text me a quote you mentioned on a podcast just here the other day. It was something about being on a really horrible hunt, and
if it's not miserable, it's not memorable.
There
is
it
that
is.
The quote?
That's the one. Yeah, Eric, if you're listening, there it is. If it's not miserable, it's not memorable. But we do sell fun, and some of those memorable hunts are the most miserable at the time.
It's true.
Yeah, and it's, I think what's neat is, like, for us, in what we do, and especially in the firearms realm, is, they're legacy products. They're, it drives me nuts because, this iPhone in my pocket, 2 to 3 years, you'll have a new one. Guns last for generations. It's a legacy product. You probably have guns that are significant to you that you want to hand to your kids someday.
You probably still have that 257
Roberts.
Roberts.
I do. Yeah.
And so we get to be a part of doing that and making memories and being out in the field with people, even though it's just a collection of raw materials put into a finished good. We get to have that experience. You got old ammo boxes sitting in people's gun safe that are probably 50 years old, and so it's neat that it's at the end of the day, like. We get to be a part of something bigger in people's lives, and I think the outdoors is a big part of that. It's fun to be in that game.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, everybody has those shared experiences where it's not what you're doing necessarily; it's who you're doing it with. And when you can, as a company, have a very small influence on that, that's meaningful.
Yeah.
Excellent, guys. Well, I don't have any other questions for you. Do you guys have anything else that you want to leave our listener with about maybe the future of Weatherby, what you got coming, what you got cooking right now?
I just say we're far from done. We've done a whole lot in the last 6 years being in Wyoming, and the pace at which we've been developing and bringing out new products has probably only increased, and there's no signs of it slowing.
No doubt.
I think what I always say is, the generations before me laid this incredible foundation and built a brand that's a household name in the shooting and hunting industry that I had nothing to do with. It wasn't even a twinkle in, my mother's eye at the time. And so we have that foundation, and that's what we're doing now. And I think by moving to Wyoming and really kind of rebuilding our team, is we're in growth mode, we're in fun mode. We're going to experiment and try and keep pushing things and try to do the best we can to live up to the name that was established before we were here. So yeah, we're not done.
Well done.
Yeah, we're having fun.
Well, like I said, I got nothing else for you. However, I do got one question for you.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to do one. And on the Hornady podcast, anytime we have a new guest, I have a question I ask every guest. And not every answer's been different. Honestly, there's a lot of similar answers. However, it's a hypothetical that a listener wrote in and asked us to answer, the popular guests on our show. So then we decided we were going to ask everybody that come on the show. And it's a horrible question, but it's just a fun, mental experiment. So, Luke, I'll start with you. Adam, give you time to marinate on this one.
Great.
In a hypothetical world, you could have unlimited ammunition. Unlimited.
Ooh, okay.
The catch-22 is you can also have unlimited firearms in infinite configurations, but they all have to be chambered in the same cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
One cartridge for the rest of your life to do your hunting and match shooting and varmint shooting and whatever else. If you had to pick one, what would it be?
Yeah, I've answered a version of this question a few times, and my answer has changed some over the years, but I think still, well, I know I'll probably take this from Adam, 300 Weatherby. There's not much it can't do.
Right.
I've been pretty fortunate in the field with that, from moose to zebra to most North American things, and it just works. And if you wanted to start playing funny games, put it in the 16-inch barrel,
Yeah, or you can hand load 110s. Or,
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. But, man, I think for the way that I hunt, I love hunting mule deer. It is a darn good option.
Awesome. 300 Weatherby. Adam?
Yeah.
I have a factory of guns and ammo, so I refuse to answer this question.
Yeah,
I have
right.
unlimited things that
he
I
already has this. You're asking one
Jason
of the
Hornady said the same thing.
Yes.
Because I get asked, it's a different question, but it's usually like, hey, if you could only have one caliber, what would it be?
Yeah.
And so it's the most painful question. I mean, we have 15 or 16 proprietary cartridges, let alone everything else, and a warehouse full of guns and ammo. So
and you love all your children, right?
It's so hypothetical. So it's hard. The problem is it's hard to not, for me as a hunter, it's hard to not go bigger.
Sure.
Okay. In other words, I'm not going to pick, a 22 caliber because I enjoy hunting large game or dangerous game, and that ain't going to work. So you almost have to go on the bigger side if you can only have one, for me. And that's why, historically the 300 Weatherby would be answer. I'd love to say something else fast like a 6.5 300, but there's going to be times where
you want the 30.
I'm going to want something else with more bullet weight.
You're talking to a guy that rarely hunts with the same rifle twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's always messing with new stuff that we have in development, and he can rarely talk about what he's using right now because it doesn't
have to take
yet.
pictures with and without at every hunt. I was just on one a few weeks ago, with experimental stuff, and it's like, okay, take it with it because we're not launching this till the first of the year, and then take this one and everything. But so it would, to be honest, I've answered it before 300 Weatherby, because when you come back to it, like you said, you can take the brown bear, but you can go shoot a whitetail with it. You can kind of do everything. When you start to even bump into the 7s, it's just, then it's to me, it's limiting that from a game potential.
Sure.
At a certain point. So
300 Weatherby's across the board. A fitting answer. I kind of suspected that one, but yeah, we do ask every guest on the show. And we've had a lot of answers and a lot of similarities too. We've had a lot of match shooters on the show, so they tend to go a little smaller because it's like I shoot more matches than I go hunting. So a lot of 6.5s in there. 3-weight Winchester, 30-06 been popular as well.
Yeah.
There's not much it can't do either. It's 300 Weatherby's 30-06 on
recoil,
superroids.
Recoil just doesn't. People always talk about recoil. Like for us, recoil is just part of the process.
Yeah.
So we, like I was joking yesterday with some guys here at this training, and they go, oh yeah, what about the recoil on that 338 RPM you came out with? It's in a little sub 5-pound gun. We do an 18-inch barrel, but that 338 you have, and I'm like, I don't know, you should ask my 5'2" daughter that went on a bison hunt with it. She didn't seem to have a problem with it, and it's everybody talks about so we kind of always joke like that's not our deciding factor, but that's because we make big stuff, and so
and most of our foundation, like Adam said before, is hunting.
Yeah.
Obviously recoil is not ideal in some of the
if
shooting
you're
games.
shooting 1,000-yard bench rest or something. You're not going to shoot Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to, one, come out here to help with the training and to make time for the Hornady podcast on behalf of
Yeah.
all of our listeners, everybody here at Hornady, sincerely thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us on, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to this episode about the need for speed. We covered a lot of ground here, and we covered it fast, from 22s to 25s to big 30s. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll catch you on the next one.